Hi, my name is Disha and I'm here with Professor Mokshda Manchanda, who's an assistant professor of English. We're here to discuss today how the English courses over the first year are very much integral to the law program overall, and how it's a very interdisciplinary course in general, and how it keeps adding to our skills. So if we can just move on to the questions. My first question to you, Professor, is over the first year, we covered a lot of issues and critiques, such as those related to capitalism and feminism and intersectionality. We even covered Camus' critique of capital punishment, which was very interesting. So my question to you is, what rationale does the faculty employ while using these texts?
So these are the two most important things for us, because you have enrolled into a law school, and law as a discipline, as an industry, is where you deal with people, you understand society better. It's very important to do that, and to also be able to think critically.
Correct.
And so we are really trying to approach it from an interdisciplinary perspective, first of all, so that you do not understand all these concepts that the society sort of is throwing at you when you're studying law in silos, in strict, in very strict boundaries, but as connected to each other, something that flows freely from one discipline to another. Ideas do that all the time.
Right.
And so it's very important for a course to be able to achieve that while also having its own integrity as a discipline. So with the literature course, our idea was to make it relevant to the life around us, the society around us. And when we do that, it makes it easy for you to become a better law student.
Correct.
It also enables our critical thinking faculties, because when you try to discourse, discern, and debate, when you try to critically analyze a perspective or a particular circumstance from different perspectives, it enables you to think critically. And as a lawyer, that's a very important skill.
Correct.
As a future lawyer, that's a very important skill. And that is something that the literature course is trying to do, while it also tries to connect directly with law. So we started off with literature and self-expression, where we tried to cover some very fundamental social realities. We tried to look at texts that talked about class, hierarchies, that talked about caste, gender, sexuality. And these are very relevant ideas in today's world. And the second part of our course had directly to deal with law, where taking from that understanding of society, of individual and society, you try to understand how law impacts people, how law impacts lives. Are justice and law the same thing? Is there a gap between the two? These are very important questions, and I think it involves a very human discourse that literature is able to bring about.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, an average law course would have a lot of literary texts in general, and they would keep it limited to that. Your course has really imbibed a lot of visual media also, and I'm referring to the comic strips and the analysis of the panels, and even the various movies that we watched over the past year and later discussed. So besides making the course very engaging, which I can guarantee that it certainly was, how else did it help? Did it help in furthering the themes that you were trying to explore?
I think it definitely did, or that's the idea that I get from the responses that I've received from students. It's also, I think, coming from the idea that an English course or a literature course, or I would like to call it literary studies,
Correct.
is not simply writing.
Right.
It has a lot more to do, because from writing, we go see a film. It was initially written. There's a screenplay associated with it. There's a lot of people sitting together, brainstorming ideas, and it's very important that in this particular course, students take away from these multiple mediums, multiple sources of multiple narratives, and the way they are put across to a wider audience. What we understand as popular culture, you would perhaps go to a film theater, see a film, and take away some joy, some entertainment. But there's also a lot of critical, analytical points to be taken away. And as students of law, I think it becomes important to do that. And I think it also makes a classroom very interactive, a very fun space for debate, for discourse.
Right.
And that's something that we've been able to achieve with all of these medias that we've included. We have studied comic strips in the classroom. We've done graphic novels. We've watched a lot of films together, and that also brings about a very good understanding of whatever themes we're trying to teach, whatever understanding of society we're trying to impart.
So you brought up critical thinking for sure, and it's very well been established that we have developed critical thinking skills over the course. But could you elaborate a little more upon how it helps when we apply the law from theory to practice? Because
Right.
it's certainly not the same. There's a huge gap between that. So how does literature aid in that?
I think, so there are two ways of looking at it. The first is obviously I can tell you what are our, what are the outcomes that we are expecting from the course, learning outcomes, and what are the outcomes that we are expecting from the entire curriculum or your entire development as a lawyer. So some program learning outcomes, some course learning outcomes, and how they map with each other, and what we finally get once we impart that in the classroom. The second is obviously you'd be able to tell better how much progress you've made over the course of last year, what you've learned, and how it connects with law. The idea that we initially had is, again, I would repeat some things like a very deep and very critical understanding of society, very important when we are talking about law, because ultimately it deals with people.
Correct.
And their problems. So how do you empathize with them? How do you understand those problems? How do you understand the problem of caste, for example? How normal or how frequent is it in our society today? How do we approach it? How do we understand somebody else's perspective of it? And for a lawyer to do that, I think it's very critical, very important. And that's something that's where I think literature and law sort of connect very easily. The other obviously is language. Like I said, law has a relationship with language. In itself, it can be studied, sure, but it's language is treated as in itself. It has a power which is performative, where stating things is it sort of really comes into practice almost instantly. And so to understand that, I think it's very important to go back to literature, to look at certain texts. For example, I would say Kafka, a very good understanding of this concept. And that's again where you can connect literature and law very easily, among other things, among a general understanding of gender, class, hierarchies in our society. When we talk about caste, when we talk about faith, these are certain things that become evident in literature and are very important to understand if you want to become a good lawyer.
I remember revisiting the theme of agency through the lens of gender, caste, class, and all of that, and I still use that. We keep revisiting those topics when we're covering constitutional law, family law in this year. So overall, I think the course has been great over the past year, and thank you so much for your time, Professor
You're
Mokshda.
welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us.